Here at the Canadian Club, we have always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas and inform the most relevant and compelling conversations of our time.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, Canadian Club members and guests. I know that we're still clearing away a number of the tables. Oops. Thanks, Colleen. I know we're still clearing away at the tables, but we're going to get started now. My name is Joseph Lowe, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and I'm delighted to play the role of your host today. First off, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to those of you joining us online, thanks to the AV services of Van Valkenburg Communications and livemeeting.ca. Today's event is made possible by the generous sponsorship provided by Norton Rose Fulbright and TD. We're also deeply grateful to our season sponsor, Canadian Bankers Association, for its continued support through our 125th season. I'd also like to take the opportunity to recognize our partnership with Canada's Forest Trust, an ESG company planting smart forests to take positive action on climate change. The carbon footprint of our entire season of events is being significantly reduced thanks to this very special partnership. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to our guest of the day. He is the publisher of Canada's largest daily newspaper and owner of a highly influential media company with strong roots in daily and community newspapers, book publishing, digital businesses in North America and beyond. What questions might you have about the state of journalism in today's dynamic world? I'll invite you to access the Q&A cards that you'll find at your tables, and I'll look forward to receiving them for the Q&A portion of our discussion today. And if you're joining us online, hit the Submit a Question button on the right-hand side of the screen as always, and I'll be sure to get your questions that way as well. Publisher, owner, CEO, and founder. Jordan Bitove is a Canadian business leader of renown. His creative energy and inspired vision have left indelible marks across a number of industries in our country. He is the founder of Vision Companies, an industry-leading experiential marketing firm. 33 years ago, he founded Great Moments in Catering, which became Canada's largest privately held event catering company. And as a leader in Canada's sports industry, Jordan helped launch the Toronto Raptors, the first NBA franchise awarded outside of the United States. And of course, today, he is publisher of the Toronto Star, a multi-platform news organization that publishes 7 days a week and has global reach through thestar.com. Jordan is also the owner of Torstar Corporation, which publishes more than 80 newspapers and operates dozens of digital properties through its city news brands and community brands. His engagement in our community has included the Kids Foundation, Toronto International Film Festival, Western University, and Right to Play. Jordan, without further ado, I present you the Canadian Club Toronto podium.
Journalism is as important and imperative today as it ever has been.
More than 200 Indigenous children.
Joe, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much for your kind opening words, and I must say that it is an absolute privilege to be here. Your organization, the Canadian Club, the leadership that it provides for allowing people like myself the opportunity to speak to an influential audience is greatly appreciated, and so I'm very humbled by this opportunity, so thank you. I see a lot of friendly faces in the room, family members, my family over here, colleagues, and many good friends and friends that stepped up today to help make it a successful day. James and Waleed, I am very grateful to you both for helping. I'm going to talk to you today, and I'm hoping that you'll walk out of here and you'll have a better understanding of an important part of our country, and more importantly, an important part of democracy in Canada and in the world. Now, the title of today's speech was Imagine a World Without Journalism. And a few years ago, that may have sounded melodramatic, but there are real alarm bells that are ringing, and we better be paying attention to them. So for the next few minutes, it's my intention to walk you through three of these main areas. First, how trusted media outlets play a critical role in defending democracy and informing our communities, and what is challenging us to uphold that role. Second, I'll touch on what Torstar and other Canadian media outlets are doing right now to counter the threat of disappearing headlines. And third, I'll share some numbers and suggest what you can do to help protect trusted journalism in Canada. Because I believe we can shift the narrative from what if it all goes away to what if we build it back and it thrives. First of all, let me tell you this, I am not a journalist. I am a former paperboy, and that's about as close as I came to the news world. I'm a longtime reader of the Star. I'm a father of 4 young children, and I'm a huge fan of our city, our province, and our country. And I'm a passionate believer in local journalism and the power to inform, champion, and challenge us for a better society. So when I learned the Star was going through a bit of a metamorphosis a few years back, I reached out to the late, great John Hondrick, who was then chair of Torstar, with a proposal for the media company. I was honored and honestly very surprised that he agreed to meet with me. At that time, the Star's challenge and the challenge of other Torstar publications was its digital transformation, an area we've made tremendous strides with over the past 2.5 years. But the big issue wasn't lagging tech, it was big tech, and the dramatic shift of ad dollars from content publishers to content providers such as Google, Meta, and Twitter. Today, over 80% of digital ad dollars go to tech companies due to the monopolies they have over our audiences. Money that's not only leaving our country, but also has implications for Canadian media, specifically in the newsrooms. And that's the challenge. The advertising revenue that once funded newsrooms has been moved, ironically, to companies that use our content for their own benefit. Oh, and did I mention to you that those companies don't want to pay us for it? The results is that we are seeing local news disappear at alarming rates. Disappear substantially enough that a group started mapping these losses. The news poverty map tracks 361 news outlets closed across Canada since 2008. 361 outlets. The Canadian Media Directors Council tracks the number even higher. 448 closed in 323 communities. 53 media outlets shuttered in the last 2 years. Over 3,000 editorial and non-editorial news jobs lost since 2020. More if we count recent layoffs. What it means is that we have some significant gaps in local information
and accountability. This is happening across the country, and not just the smaller markets. Major cities are seeing this problem too. Now let's use Ottawa as an example. 6 years ago, there was the closure of 9 papers in the Ottawa region. The Ottawa Citizen is down from hundreds of reporters a few years ago to around 25 today. And the recent job losses at Chorus laid a direct hit on global news in Ottawa. Now, I want to be really clear, and I think we all understand this. Ottawa is not a news desert. It's our capital of our country. But what's happening there is a clarion call, and we should all be concerned. When a market of that size in our nation's capital risks losing local context, fewer reporters means fewer stories and tighter coverage. Period. The empty seats designated for reporters at City Hall, in Parliament, and in local courts are not going to be filled by message boards and isolated interest groups. Fact-checked, investigated, accountable truths, the stories that inform civil discourse, how we vote, what is happening in schools, hospitals, in the offices of influence, and on our streets. This comes from journalists, real people putting in a ton of effort to keep citizens informed. Now, I know these issues are all near and dear to you, and we talk about EDI, we talk about climate change, supporting Canadian businesses and communities. So much of the insight and awareness that informs your work is a result of journalists digging in on these issues. I'm going to use the star as a proxy for imagining a world without journalism. If we didn't have journalism, would Torontonians have enough insight to cast their ballot in the next civic election, or enough information to even care about voting? Last election, voter turnout was an abysmal 29%. Deciding who will be our next mayor will be one of the most important decisions in our city's history. We all know the issues: the violence on the TTC, homelessness, affordable housing, mental health, crime. How many people in this room have had their car stolen, their house broken into, or some other thing happen in the last few years? This is a critical time, and it's important that we understand where the candidates stand on issues so that we can hold them to account. We have to get this right. Would citizens be aware of how often police breach Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and what the implications are for our justice system? Would the parents of Nathaniel McLennan, a 2-year-old who died tragically, still be suspects in their toddler's death? And would the woman now charged with manslaughter be free? Without trusted, accountable journalism, how are we going to counter the misinformation and disinformation that has come to dominate discussion and impact our safety in public discourse? When Joe Rogan gives a massive platform to fact deniers and conspiracy theorists, when George Santos finds a seat in the US government because there are not enough news outlets to pick up on the questions raised by a small community newspaper, when Google and Meta want to block news from trusted sources to avoid paying for it under the new Bill C-18, these are very scary things to consider in terms of our ability to access trusted sources of information. The fact is, real journalism costs money. Technology is not going to break a story or uncover a hidden truth or give local context on a national situation. Google, Meta, ChatGPT, and all tech companies depend on a source of origin for their content. It is based on someone who does that work. Our newsrooms are that source. To underscore some of that work, let's take a closer look at our series on charter breaches. Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms has been in place for over 40 years. The stars Rachel Mendelson and Steve Buist of the Hamilton Spectator set out to see how often police violated the charter rights and what was being done about it. They used legal databases to scour thousands of criminal cases, isolating breaches that were serious enough to threaten public confidence in our justice system. The team uncovered 600 charter breaches cases where judges had to exclude crucial evidence from trial, drop charges, throw out cases altogether because of things like unjustified vehicle stops, violent arrests, and illegal searches. A quarter of the cases were identified with the assistance of Western University Law School and their hidden racial profiling project. They worked with our reporters and shared their case law. As a result of this investigative series, police forces are making efforts to improve accountability and transparency. Toronto Police acknowledge and they were unaware that they were unaware of more than 90 cases that our journalists uncovered and launched an internal review. Rachel, Steve, our designers and editors were awarded the prestigious Sidney Hillman Canadian Prize for Excellence in Journalism in service of common good. In fact, they're collecting that prize this very evening. Now, knowing what we're up against, what are Canadian media doing to keep local news from disappearing? At Torstar, we're putting a keen focus on the pillars that matter: local news, groundbreaking investigations, and digital growth. We've improved and continue to improve our digital platforms and products. Today's news is digital, and the ongoing challenge is keeping on top of that technology, ensuring we meet the evolving needs. We have made significant investments to improve our digital offerings to our subscribers so our readers have a better experience. And we put similar investment into ad tech for clients so we can give better value and performance. We can't be apples to apples with search and social, but we can give readers and advertisers the intangible benefit of resonance within trusted environments and the brand halo that comes from being aligned with local news. These are quality clicks, real people clicks that work for our clients, and we are partnering to improve them every single day. Editorial, we brought back the Stars Paid Intern program, and I have to say it's one of the proudest things in my tenure as a publisher. This was a program that had been shuttered a number of years ago, and what is particularly satisfying is we've launched the career of 14 journalists so far. It brings new voices, and in particular, in these times, it brings diversity to our newsroom. Now, we're focused on giving readers great local coverage and insightful journalism. In November of 2020, in the height of the pandemic, I was asked to go to Barrie to meet with some community leaders, and our head of community papers at that time, Dana Robbins, had asked me to drive out and talk about a moment that had an impact on me. When I showed up there, I wasn't expecting really anyone. It was that point in time where we were all living in fear. And when I got to Barrie, there were 20 community leaders sitting in a room. And these were MPs, MPPs, the head of the Center for Diversity, the head of CAMH for the region, the president of Georgian College, and the list goes on and on and on. And what did they tell me that day? They told me the importance of our publications to local community. They talked to me about when there's an opioid crisis in the area, that the first call is to our journalists. They told me that when the big bad developers are coming in urban sprawl and infringing on their space, we're the first call. When the food bank is running low on food, we're the first call. That moment had a profound impact on me. And as a result of that, we are now organized across the province where we have 16 advisory councils, and we have community leaders and others that are working with us to ensure that we are covering topics to be able to support the community, to the point where we kicked back $2.1 million when everyone was struggling to get their businesses and community programs were struggling to get back after the pandemic. We kicked back $2.1 million to help them in free advertising. Now, earlier I touched on shared values, and I know you are champions for a better way. As members and guests of the Canadian Club, as individuals, as part of larger companies with important missions and mandates. Yet there is a major piece missing. Where is the support for local media? When governments and businesses claim to support communities, why is local not a part of it? When climate change, healthcare, reconciliation, equity, diversity, inclusion are priorities, how can Canadian media be overlooked? People have never had more options and interest in news, yet the revenue to support outlets has never been lower. This has to change. Over the last few years, advertising support for local news has cratered, and you can see it on the screen. That's what it looks like for the Star, and I'll bet you it's just about the same for every other media organization in Canada. I won't name names, but as an example, one of Canada's leading institutions whose values are 100% aligned with our company spent $50 million in advertising last year. And what was the Star's share? Less than 0.013%. And this isn't an isolated example. There are dozens of big media companies and hundreds of smaller businesses that just don't invest in Canadian media at all. I'm not being dramatic here. These are facts. The impact on newsrooms, devastating. Even when Canadian media outlets are included on the advertising plan, as they should be, when it comes to the federal government, very little of that money is going to local news. One would think that the federal government, with the support of Bill C-18 and other pieces of legislation, would put their advertising dollars where their mouth is. In their last report, the feds claimed an advertising spend of just over $140 million to reach Canadians on topics like COVID, reconciliation, equality, climate, affordability, healthcare, and many other important issues. Factoring in digital and print for the Star, our 6 other dailies and 70 community newspapers, the Government of Canada invested 0.27%, less than $400,000 on a $140 million budget. Now, you can't tell me that voters and citizens aren't reading our content. I know they are. I see it every day in the page views and clicks that we see. So this brings me to my last point. What can you do? You can embrace an ethical media supply chain. I'm borrowing that phrase from a colleague of mine. An ethical media supply chain supports Canadian-owned and operated trusted news organizations. An ethical media supply chain prioritizes keeping money in Canada. It prioritizes media integrity. Every dollar stays in Canada. Every dollar stays here to support and strengthen local journalism. And if every click is, and it ensures that every click is a human click. It's like a flywheel. Ethical ad investment stays in Canada and funds trusted journalism that attracts readers, supports our shared values, and gives marketers a halo effect from being around compelling local news. At Torstar, I can assure you, each dollar that comes to us goes back to support local journalism. And we are doing all that we can as partners to make your clicks count. To be clear, this is not a charitable appeal. This is a partnership and a call to action. This is about making a difference together. Publishers and news providers aren't asking for government funding or your advertising to support and pat our pockets. Far from it. We're fighting to keep our newsrooms going, to pay for journalists and editors and designers who are out there telling the stories that matter and the stories that we need to hear. We need your partnership. So here's what I hope you'll do. Go back to your office and find out what percentage of your media spend goes to supporting Canadian-owned and operated media. If it's not 20%, it's not good enough. Whether it's Torstar, The Globe, or CP24, trusted news delivers the audiences that you want, and we are ready to partner with you and give you great value. The government needs to do their parts to help as well. We appreciate federal legislation, but it's not enough to actually grow the media industry in Canada. When I gave you the example earlier, Torstar got 0.25% of the federal government's buy. If that percentage went up by 2% or even 5%, think what a difference that revenue could make when we put it towards journalism. And I know I've talked a lot about ad spend, and I'm sorry, but this is an important thing. Here's another key component of our future success: subscriptions, and in particular, digital subscriptions. Digital subscriptions are the driving force today behind the media industry's ability to transform. We have data that proves people with paid subscriptions are more engaged in their communities and their work. Go back to your office, ask your colleagues and friends if they have a paid subscription to Canadian News, and if not, why? I think back to the days when I was a kid, and I'm a few generations old. My father would sit at one end of the table and read the business section. My mother would read the front section or the entertainment section, and I would read the sports section, and we would have a conversation about what was going on in the world on important topics. Those conversations aren't happening today. We need our future generations to be informed. Whatever you can do to partner with us, pay for subscriptions, have this conversation with your peers and family. Let's embrace an ethical media supply chain and support our Canadian media. In summary, trusted media outlets play a critical role in defending democracy and informing our communities. Yet we're losing revenue to foreign players, challenging us to uphold our role, as more job losses and closures are a real and present threat. But we're not backing down. We're facing these challenges by focusing on local news, investigative journalism, and a great digital experience for our readers and partners. We're earning their investment via subscriptions and advertising. And you can absolutely play a part in this with us. Promote and invest in ethical media, subscribe to local news, and talk to everyone you know about what is at risk. When you walk out of this room, what are you going to do? If enough of us raise our voices, we can be heard. And that whole what-if scenario, it doesn't have to be a threat, imagining the worst. With the right focus, what-if can be, what's the real possibility here? At the beginning, I spoke to you about why I bought Torstar. In just over 2 years, I've realized the importance of trusted journalism, and I can see a path forward, and it's called great journalism, and it sells. Now, I think I'd like to do something a little unorthodox here, and Joe, if you'll indulge me on this, but I'd like to ask my colleagues at Torstar to stand up, and that goes for everybody that's here, whether you're a journalist, working support, but I'd like you all to stand up and stay standing for a moment, please. These are the men and women. These are the men and women who work day and night to make our city, province, and country better. These are the people who protect the vulnerable, hold businesses and government to account. These are the people who help us make informed decisions during elections. These are the people who protect democracy and society. These are the people who receive online threats, death threats, and are attacked, yet carry on. Why? Because they want what is best for our city and for our country. Thank you. So in closing, I want to hear from the room, what can we do to protect our country and protect an important institution, which is journalism in Canada? What's important to you? Thank you.
And say that I wish we had so much more time than we actually do to get through some of these issues, because that was a very compelling set of remarks, so many issues to dig into. We do have a number of questions from the audience already, and so please do keep them flowing, and I'll try to get through as many as I can in our remaining time. I was hoping, Jordan, you could first maybe help ground our audience a little bit by talking a bit more about Bill C-18 and understand what Bill C-18 means to the industry and to the themes that you talked about at the top.
It's a great question, and I think that, I approach it from two ways. I approach it as the owner of a media company, and I talked a lot about it, so I don't want to bore people with it, but the fact that these tech giants are basically stealing all the great work that our team does. They're throwing it up on their sites, and the click-throughs, the advertising, 80% of that revenue is going in their pocket. There's no accountability. So this is about leveling the playing field, and we saw what happened in Australia and France and others, where the government had to step in and hold them to account on that. We also see the other side of it, like what they did, and I talked about it, how they sort of started manipulating the algorithms and moving things around. And so we're letting people in Silicon Valley and other parts of the world that have no investment in this country dictate what news we read, and are taking all the revenue on the other side of it. The other part of it is just me as a father of 4 young children, and I think everybody should be concerned about it because we've given these organizations free rein to be able to allow anything to be put online. So someone could write something slanderous with anonymously about you. We see what happens when our kids look at TikTok, or if our kid's not in a good frame of mind and they log in something about not being happy, and an algorithm picks them up and takes them down a very deep, dark hole, and we know what could happen with that. So we have an obligation. We, not just me, everyone in this room, has an obligation to call on our government officials and to support C-18 and to bring in some form of regulation around the internet. We wouldn't allow it to happen in any other business. Why are we allowing it to happen there? For American interests.
It's interesting, and maybe there's some irony in this next comment/question. Some of the CEOs of those tech giants that you just referenced were in the news yesterday, talking about or expounding about the cautionary tales around AI. And so AI is clearly seen as a threat, maybe even to that industry as well. But we've seen, you mentioned ChatGPT in your remarks as well. What do you see as the role, if any, for AI, and what do we do about it?
AI, listen, it's the future, and we're embracing it. We're trying to understand, and that's part of why we need the help of some of these tech giants. The money that we would get from Google, Meta, et cetera, is going to be reinvested. What's going to be reinvested? Into technology, into understanding how we can use SEO and how we can disseminate our messages in a more effective way. AI, we see it. My kids are using ChatGPT to be able to help them with their work. But that content that is in there comes from the work of our reporters. That's where it all comes. So you need a source of content. And so we, as I said at the beginning, we're embracing it, and I think that there's no doubt it will play a role. We're looking at things. I had a conversation with Neil Oliver, our CEO, the other day, where really re-engaging in high school sports. Well, we don't have the reporters, the journalists to be able to go in there and do it. But there is technology that's out there right now, Game Changer, Team Snap, others, where people are feeding the information. And what we need to do is we need people to edit it and check facts and just manage that. But that, to me, that just opens a wider opportunity for us.
That's interesting. Maybe building on that technology kind of vector for a moment. We're talking about journalism here, and we know how the medium and message are really kind of tied together. What is the role of print moving forward versus, you talked about digital, and you mentioned digital subscription as a key pillar moving forward.
Listen, I'm a print reader. I love print, and been reading it for decades. When I took it over, I sat down with our team, and we were in this like double-digit decline, and so we sat and talked about it, and we realized that the print side of our business is actually quite lucrative, right? You think about it, people are paying $50, $60, and they're loyal. They're loyal. They've been subscribers for 30, 40, 50 years. They buy the products that are advertised in the newspapers. So we just doubled down on print, and I'm told that we are the best performing print publication in North America. And it's quite remarkable because it was all on the back of great journalism. Imagine that, just putting more content out there, creating a better reader experience, maybe giving people topics that they want to read, and we've been able to see an absolute boon in our numbers.
That's,
but to answer
yeah.
your question, and this, I just had this conversation earlier. I used the analogy of the automotive industry. GM and Ford were two of the most profitable companies, largest companies in the world. And GM goes into receivership, gets a bailout from government, things go down in full decline. Well, we were the same thing. Our industry was the exact same thing. Toronto Star was close to 2 million subscribers at one point in time. We were the place to go in a city. And what I say to my team and to my colleagues at other publications, we're never going to get back to those days. We'll never get back to. But if we focus, if you use the analogy of the automotive industry, if we focus and we become Porsche, BMW, whatever your brand is, we can focus on a niche and provide something, and maybe we can even charge more money because we're giving them a better experience around it. So I think we have to change. This is a model that's been around for hundreds of years, and we keep going back to the well thinking that it's going to be the same thing again. It's not. You got to go all in on digital, right? I spent a great deal of time at the very beginning talking to Marty Barron at the Washington Post, talking to A.G. Salzberger, the publisher and owner of the New York Times, and they said it's really simple. Here's the playbook. You know what the playbook was? Subscriptions. Great journalism, bring independence, balance to your journalism, and sell subscriptions.
Irrespective of the medium.
Irrespective of the medium.
Maybe kind of building on kind of the economic model moving forward for Toronto Star and your peer group. Some of the allure of the giants that we've talked about is around scale. They're global in nature. They reach billions of eyeballs, et cetera. What is your answer to that? Like, I think maybe local news is maybe in the local intimacy maybe is a part of it, not to kind of lead the witness, but what is your view on the antidote to that?
Such a great question. I don't know about you, but you and I have talked about this. When I and family members and friends went to Europe after university or went to Asia or wherever we went, we put a Canadian flag on our backpack. Why? Why did we do that? Because everyone around the world, first of all, we wanted people to know we're not American. But people around the world love Canadians, right? We're polite. We have great values. We're good people. And to me, to your question, and it goes back to the conversation really with Salzberger and others. We're in Canada's most important market. We're the largest publication in that market. And the city represents diversity and all these great things that are going on. Why shouldn't we be telling that story on a global basis? So that a person in Mumbai, Dubai, London, wherever, is reading about it. Our incredible pieces that are being done on assisted death right now, that really have changed legislation, those are global stories, and those stories, you can market them around the world. So the opportunity, when everyone was saying, oh, the internet's gonna kill you guys, the internet's an opportunity for us, and we should be looking at way beyond the province of Ontario or even Canada. We should be looking at a global audience and being able to become the postcard for what is great about Canada.
So news, you're here. Yeah, so what I'm hearing there is like news happens where we are, and how do we get that news out to the world in the most credible way that we possibly can?
I spent an hour with one of the federal cabinet ministers yesterday, and he is a Torontonian, and he took me through things that I blew my mind about what he is doing with the housing crisis and things that are happening out in Cape Breton, in Vancouver, elsewhere throughout the country, even in Toronto. And that was after years of work and studying and bringing infrastructure in. But to me, that's a global story that needs to be told. How to create affordable housing in partnership with government, an amazing story. And so that's the opportunity, is finding that content, engaging audiences on a global basis.
Final word, because we are getting close to time, I'm told. Jordan, you've painted kind of a great backdrop for us to understand the context within which the Toronto Star is pushing forward in its future. What are you most optimistic about in that future?
I got to be honest. I mean, you've heard, or others have, that I get emotional talking about the work that our journalists do. These people are heroes, and I say that to myself. You guys, I use that term. What they do day in and day out makes a difference, and to be, I say it humbly, to be the head of that organization where you know that you can have an impact on a city for the better is quite humbling. I think that, my hope is that in conversations like this, that others will realize the importance of journalism to democracy and to a civil society and to holding government officials. The government, loved it when the pandemic was. They weren't doing. Benzie can probably, and Martin can talk, and others can talk, but they weren't holding their scrums, and there was no ability to access them and ask them the tough questions about why they made these decisions. That's what our guys do, men and women do day in and day out. So that excites me. On the business front, digital, like we're going hard on that, and new audiences, right? Kids today aren't reading newspapers, and they're barely looking at our digital sites. But what we're doing is we're going after them. So we now have over 1 million followers on Facebook or Instagram. We're posting on TikTok. We have this incredible partnership with Enthusiast Gaming on a thing called AFK, which is Away from Keyboard, where we're talking to the largest gaming audiences in the world, and we're providing content to them in the medium that they like, video or whatever else, podcasts or whatever. And so all I can say is this, being the neophyte to the industry, I've realized very quickly that good journalism sells. And when we were going into this and there was a complete shutdown on hiring in it, we hired people. Hired Richard Warnick, Christine Dobby, Mike Wilner on the baseball side of things. When our Ottawa bureau, which I would argue is probably the best bureau in Ottawa, needed a little bit of reinforcement, Althea Raj had just left Huffington Post, and everyone said, we can't hire her, we don't have the money. And I talked at great length to them about, just show me the numbers. We know now, we track in real time, I can show you on my phone, what every article, how many page views, how long someone's on an article. And the amazing part about it was an easy decision. Let's look at Chantal Hébert or Susan Delco or whoever and look at their numbers. And if Althea can hit half of that, she's a winner. But Althea brought another dimension to it, podcasts. And right now, her podcast is the #1 podcast in Canada, and sponsors are paying dearly. Political podcasts in Canada are paying dearly for it. Kevin Donovan's Death in a Small Town has been for a number of weeks the #1 podcast in the country. We weren't doing that 2 years ago. So these are all opportunities, and I think what we have to do is we have to just shake this old model of where your grandparents' paper or whatever, and we have to embrace technology. We need the tech giants to play fair with us, and the last thing, and I know because we got to go, but the last thing I'll just say is Apple News, a great example of it. If you go on Apple News today, 5 of the 10 top stories are generally in Canada are Toronto Star stories. That was a medium that wasn't open to us. And what we said when we were negotiating, because they pay us for it, not a lot of money, or they weren't paying us a lot, and we were going back, Neil was going back to, we said, just work with us. Show us how we can get better exposure with those articles. And so there's this great partnership with Apple. That's the art of the possible, and that's what we need to do. And so I'm not here. I'm here because there's been so much friction in the industry for so many years, and now what is wonderful to see is we're working together as an industry to hold Ottawa accountable, to ask advertisers to step up. And it's not just about me, it's about these other small markets in Canada that need our help. Because when we pull out of a market, who's covering the news? Who's covering that local council? Nobody. And so someone tweets whatever that's libelous, and we have complete disinformation. And we have what happened in Washington on January 5th a couple of years ago happening in all these other countries. That's not Canada. That's not the Canada that I know, but we're being influenced by all these things. And we need to do what we've always done, which is be this incredible, humble country that is smart and approaches things in a dignified way. And that's the opportunity.
Well, Jordan Bitove, you've clearly shown us this is not a journalistic imperative, this is a Canadian imperative. Thank you so much again for joining us today at the Canadian Club Toronto. Thank you. I'm just going to close at the stage. I'm just going to close up there. Yeah. Thank you again so much, Jordan. Guests, I'd like to offer another round of sincere thanks and appreciation to our event sponsors today, Norton Rose Fulbright and TD. And now let me briefly share, before I let you kind of along your way for the rest of your day, our upcoming events for the next month. On Wednesday, April 5th, Lee Turner, the co-CEO of Ceridian, will join us in conversation with David Skok, founder and editor-in-chief of The Logic. On Thursday, April 13th, we'll host a virtual conversation with Project 8 co-founders Diana Matheson and Thomas Gilbert on the launch of a professional Canadian women's soccer league. And on Wednesday, April 19th, we will host Joanna Griffiths, founder of Nix, and Noura Sakaja, co-founder of Majuri, for a conversation with two of Canada's leading entrepreneurs. Please visit us at canadianclub.org to learn more about these and other upcoming events, to purchase your memberships, as well as, of course, tickets. Thank you again to everyone for joining us today. I wish you a great afternoon and look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.